These incredible men are here as part of a mission to have California separate from the United States and become its own incredible, sovereign, free nation. Marcus has created and founded the CalExit Project in order to do just that.
We don't need the American government. I know that sounds radical when you first hear it. There's ICE raids in the streets. There's people being disappeared. There's people being sent off to torture camps. I grew up protesting against Trump. I get right in the middle of the Trump protests. I loved it. But at some point I had to ask myself, were we getting results? You're looking at things that have never happened in US history, ever.
I started researching and writing about a little over 10 years ago, where my thesis was that the United States as a form of government really is at an end. I suggested that we were at that point a single triggering event away from the start of the next civil war, and things have only gotten worse since then. I prefer to save lives, and separation of California from the federal government is a life-saving maneuver, in my opinion, and that's why I'm so passionate about it.
Separating from a country of extremism and tyrannical misleadership, or us becoming our own sovereign nation where we don't function like this any longer. What is more radical versus common sense? Welcome to Masters of Self University podcast, your highest source of sacred truths and universal wisdom. Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Rachel Fiori, mystic, spiritual teacher, psychic healer, and founder of Masters of Self University. Join our journey of soul transformation as we deep dive into this latest episode. Hello, beautiful souls and amazing beings. I'm Rachel Fiori, and I am so excited to dive into what we're going to dive into today. I am with my co-hosts, Ellie Lee and Danny Morley, but even more importantly and excitedly, I have two incredible men that I would like to introduce you to. Now, I did say two. For those of you who are watching this on video, you're only going to see one. That is Marcus Ruiz Evans, and he's holding that phone up to let you know that we have JJ Ames with us too. These incredible men are here as part of a mission to have California separate from the United States and become its own incredible, sovereign, free nation. Marcus has created and founded the CalExit Project in order to do just that. JJ has joined him on that. Let's get to the exciting stuff. Marcus, tell us a little bit about you, your background. We'll let JJ do the same, and then let's talk about CalExit.
Really appreciate the opportunity. I've been looking forward to this for a month, so since our first conversation. I've also made a series of videos that I want to share with you guys. I sent you an email. I'll send some more. Really good material that can help everybody be educated. Basically, long story short, I'm born and raised in Cali. Born and raised, worked for the California government, went to California schools. I've lived in LA, the Bay, Fresno, Sacramento, Central Valley, Inland Empire, and visited San Diego a lot. So I've been all over. I worked for the government, lived all over, been here my whole life, studied here. I love this place. We're not perfect. Of course not. You know, we still have some racism, we still have some problems, but I think that we're the most dedicated to fixing it. Basically, the idea is this. We don't need the American government. I know that sounds radical when you first hear it. Hey, I was at a conference last night. Okay, I was at a bunch of hardcore Los Angeles liberals last night presenting this idea. And I go, look, I understand that it sounds radical at first, but let me just give you a little snapshot. I'm talking to a bunch of people in Los Angeles last night who are scared. They're terrified, right? There's ICE raids in the streets. There's people being disappeared. There's people being sent off to torture camps like that one guy in Chicago. They got children being gassed. One of the things I brought up with them was artillery shells are being shot over the 5 freeway.
Yep.
And then I said, how many of you were aware that fragments of those artillery shells fell on the freeway? People would have died, right? So Trump just did that for fun. And then he also surrounded the governors office with troops. And then he, which has never happened in U.S. history. And then he threatened to arrest him. When you add all these things up, they're crazy. And people go, well, there was one woman going, well, look, we've got to get ICE out. And ICE is clearly breaking the law. And why can't we have our people enforce the law? And why are we paying for all this with our taxes? And I go, those are great questions. And they go, we also want money out of politics. And I go, that's right, too. And I go, how are you going to get all that done? And I go, we're going to go protest. And look, I'm going to the protest. I grew up protesting against Trump. I get right in the middle of the Trump protests. I loved it. But at some point, I had to ask myself, were we getting results? I lived through 2016. I lived through the resist movement. I participated in the resist movement. It totally failed. Like it failed. They won't admit that, but it failed. And so I'm going, okay, nobody's going to go stop ICE protests because that would be called insurrection. If you as a California official direct police officials to stop a federal government, you go to prison. Yeah. You cannot tell people to stop paying taxes because that's also a felony. You cannot stop paying taxes because that's also a felony, and people need to be looking to go to prison. So you also can't get Citizens United undone. That's the money in politics. That's been at the Supreme Court, for about 15 years. So all of your issues come to the federal level. They come down to the federal government. We don't want ICE. Great. We're going to protest. Great. That's going to scare Donald Trump and the Republicans? No. Right. We don't want this. Well, Trump doesn't care what California wants. The Republicans don't care what we want. You could get half the population out here protesting. It means nothing to them. And yet we've been fighting for money out of politics for a decade. We've been fighting against ICE harassing us since 2016, 2017. It's 8 years later. Nothing's gotten fixed. Nothing's gotten better. And so what I basically said was I applied that Occam's razor, or I think it was Einstein. Don't keep doing the same thing and then expecting different results, right? So we're protesting. And I go, look, Trump was here in 2016. Then he was here in 2020. Then he was here in 2024. What makes you think that ideology is going away? Right? He was supposed to be repudiated in 2016. Everybody said that. They said he's a fluke. He's going to prison. He's going away. He didn't. Biden came in and said, oh, Republicans are going to realize he's wrong and they're going to turn against them and everybody's going to be thinking. That totally failed. No one brings that up. Then they had January 6th. Then he got even more popular. And then he won the popular election. So my point is, you've been fighting this force for a decade and you've never gotten rid of it.
Yeah.
Ever. Despite everything you said, you've never gotten rid of it. And the big point I made was this. When the Palisades fire happened and Californians were burned alive and their bodies charred on the ground and their families lying next to them, crying, weeping, besides themselves, destitute, people were homeless, chaos, third world living situations. Donald Trump said, I don't know if I want to help you guys because I'm not sure I like you.
Yep.
And I go, name the last time that happened in U.S. history. Never. Name the last time a president started shooting artillery rounds over the freeway in a state. You got to go back to the Civil War. Name the last time a president said, I'll threaten to arrest a governor and put troops around him. You got to go back to the Civil War. Name the last time a president said, I'm going to direct the National Guard against the will of the people to quell a domestic protest. You got to go back to Johnson in the 60s. So you're looking at things that have never happened in U.S. history, ever, or you have to go back to the Civil War, basically, to find them. And there was one woman last night who, an old-time activist, and she's like, this is so radical. Look, there's 6 senators who could change this bill and they may keep democracy alive. And I go, listen to what you're saying.
Yes.
Listen to what you're saying. Look, ma'am, I don't disagree with you. You care. You're right. But you're coming down to, boy, I hope 6 senators out of 100 or out of 400 people in the government do the right thing or democracy's over tomorrow. What? Obama came here. We had Prop 50. And I go, people, look at this. California passed Prop 50 and we go, great, democracy saved. And I go, think about this. The most reasonable, balanced, competent president this country's seen in about 20, 30 years came to California and did a commercial basically saying it's all up to you guys to save democracy in America. He said the whole country's counting on you. Think about this. An ex-president comes here and goes, I hope this one state passes this vote or the whole country's over. I hope these 6 senators out of 100 or 400 do the right thing or the whole country's over. If you're in a house and somebody's in your house and they're waving a gun around. Just wild. And you say, well, hey, they haven't turned and looked in my direction, so this is safe.
Exactly.
That's madness. That's
Yes.
total madness. So I want the same things. We want the same things. People are going, this is radical. And I'm going, what you're doing isn't working. It doesn't protect you. You also can't assume that the Trump population is going to go away. We have heard these people were going to be dissuaded for years. It hasn't happened. And if you really want to get really scary, the census says that Caucasian people will be the majority voters till 2045. There's a guy named Thomas Mann. He's a demographer you should look up. And what he said was that basically the prediction is that the center is more conservative than the coast. Hillary Clinton kind of talked about how I got the coastal vote, they got the interior. So what's happening with Trumpism is that minorities don't want to stay in the middle. They're leaving. LGBTQ don't want to stay there. Immigrants don't want to move there. Young people who are progressive don't want to stay there. So what you're getting is all of the progressive liberal elements leaving the center and not staying there and going to the coast. And over time, what they're saying is it's going to be more hardcore, old, white, conservative, and angry because their economies aren't good. Yep. And they don't ever run into people with different opinions. They don't run into minorities. They don't run into liberals. They don't run into protesters. They don't run into young people. They don't run into socialists. They don't run into immigrants. And so it's all Fox News all the time. Hardcore, no diversity. And he goes, that's going to be 35, 42 states. And that's never going to change until the year 2045, when there's just straight up more minority voters than Caucasian voters. Look, a lot of Caucasians are great, but JJ, I love you. But I have family from Texas. I know there's some not so great racist Caucasians, mostly in the interior. And this is saying they're going to be worse and get more hardcore to the year 2045.
Yes.
There's a theory called population displacement. I'll shut up here in just a second. This is real key. There's a country called Fiji in the 1980s, and they were very stable for a long time. They had native Fijians and then half people from India who were shipped there by England. For a long time, it was stable until the Indian population went from 40% to 60% of the population. And the Fijians, who were 60%, dropped to 40%. During that demographic shift, it was civil war and dead people in the streets for about 10 to 15 years. It only ended when the demographic shift changed. And now it's like, so it was majority Fijians, and then the Indian population started growing. Civil war. Oh, Indian population, dominant majority, civil war ends. But they're calling it the transition period. We had the same thing here in California in the 1990s. The 80s were less racist than the 1990s in California. Prop 187, everybody better speak English. Why the hell do we have all these immigrants here and all these undocumented here in the 1990s? And I go, that was when the majority white population went from 55 to 45% of the population. And that anger that we experienced in the 1990s only ended around 98, 99, when the Caucasian population was a definitive minority and was stated so in the news. Then it calmed down. There's this period where we're the dominant ethnic group, and we're going to fight to stay dominant, and we'll do whatever we need. But when we're no longer dominant, you got to give into it. The census is saying that these angry, conservative Caucasian people, mostly from the center of America, who own a majority of states, aren't going to change till 2045, or about 20 years from now. I'll shut up. JJ, what's your intro? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you, Marcus. Let's hear from JJ. JJ, I want to say this. JJ has a strong political background. He's a professor. JJ, I want you to speak to who you are. Tell our listeners what your background is and why you're passionate about this movement for California to separate from the United States and be its own free sovereign nation.
I will be happy to do that, Rachel. I'm JJ Ames, currently teaching political science with an emphasis on American federal government at the University of Oklahoma. Prior to that, I spent the bulk of the last 40 plus years in Washington, D.C. as a general political consultant. Managed over 70 campaigns ranging in elected office from county sheriff to congressmen, senators, and governors. I worked on 3 presidential campaigns, I've been an executive speechwriter for 5 cabinet members over the course of the last 20 years. And I'm passionate about this particular situation because I started researching and writing about 10 years ago now, a little over 10 years ago, where I was, my thesis was that the United States as a form of government really is at an end. I suggested that we were at that point a single triggering event away from the start of the next civil war, and things have only gotten worse since then. When I first began to write about the demise of this form of government, I was pretty openly mocked by a fair number of people. But as time has gone on, I've received a pretty significant number of academic apologies, if you will, from people who have finally begun to understand that this form of government truly is at an end. I hooked up with Marcus, and we were in complete synergy immediately. The only thing that I will dispute about what Marcus just said is that the date upon which America will become a majority-minority nation continues to move closer to where we are today. And actually, right now, we're closer to 2035 and not 2045.
Okay. There we go.
Yeah.
Yep. There we go. I like to hear that.
Yeah, and one other key point to make when we're talking about that particular date is that Pew Research comes out at least once a year, and I think lately they've been doing twice a year on exactly that research question. At what point will the U.S. become a majority-minority nation? And what is absolutely noteworthy is that every time that Pew comes out and reduces that time frame down to something closer to where we are today, gun sales spike all over the whiter areas of the country. So these spikes have been noted for about the last maybe 7 or 8 years, I guess, and they've been plotted so it's easy to see the correlation between the forward movement of that time when we'll become a majority-minority nation and gun sales in white America. So
incredible.
If you and again, why I'm so passionate about this is I see this as a life-saving maneuver, as a life-saving circumstance. In the first Civil War, we lost 566,000 Americans at a time when, other than the Gatling gun, it still took about 30 seconds to fire a single shot. Today, we have weapons that fire anywhere from 600 to 6,000 rounds a minute.
Yep.
So the question that I ask myself is, what would that number of deceased Americans be in a Civil War 2.0 with weapons firing 600 to 6,000 rounds a minute? One interesting point along that same line is that there are about 330 million Americans in the country right now. There are about 480 million registered weapons, just registered weapons.
Wow.
And of those 480 million registered weapons, about 45 million of them are either automatic, fully automatic, or convertible to automatic for less than $50. And that would make just the owners of those weapons, the owners of those 45 million weapons, the largest army in the world times 10. So we already have our backs up against the wall, and we're staring in the face the prospect of going to war with the largest army in the world times 10. I prefer to save lives, and separation of California from the federal government is a life-saving maneuver, in my opinion, and that's why I'm so passionate about it.
I love that.
I'm sorry.
I love that. I want to thank you for that, JJ. And I want to say this, everything that you've both shared so far, I want to go back, tie this together, but I want to go back to something that Marcus said, that some people's reactions to, hey, California, let's be our own nation. Oh, that's so radical. Because I've heard that as well. Of course, people say that's crazy. That's too big. What are you talking about? That's so radical. Let's change perspective. What is radical right now is what we are witnessing in real time.
Thank you.
That's what's radical.
Thank you.
I mean, it is insanity what we are witnessing. It is extreme, radical, sadistic, tyrannical dictatorship behavior. For people in the government to be called seditious and they should be hung. One of the latest, posts and social media tweets by Trump is just because they disagree with him and because they tell military people, you don't have to follow directions that are actually illegal, right? And when people say this out loud, his response to that is that they are seditious and they should be hung. That's from the, quote unquote president. I don't even like to call him that. He's a misleader. That is what's radical here. So saying that we are in a movement and we are building the more highly conscious people who absolutely stand for this no more and have zero tolerance for this kind of evil, this kind of war, this kind of violence, this kind of aggression, this kind of dictatorship. To not stand for this any longer is not a radical act of any kind. It's actually the act of divinity. It's the act of peace. It's the act of what the way of equality is. It is saying that we are all souls that want to live in a beautiful, wonderful world that we can create together. We can create whatever we want to create. Why are we still tolerating such radical extremism by looking and witnessing what these people and these men in charge are actually doing and acting out? That's what's radical.
Yes.
What we are rational, civil, loving beings.
Preach.
Who will not stand for this any longer.
I just add one thing. This notion that CalExit is radical. The same people who would suggest that CalExit is a radical notion are the same people who travel to work on the same route every day. They go to the same restaurants on the weekend. They like to comb their hair the same way. They buy the same foods at the grocery store every time they go. That's because as human beings, we have a natural aversion to change.
There you go.
And in this particular case, yes, it's a major change, but it's a change for the better. You have to. Many people that I've spoken to about CalExit start out with, it's a radical movement, and I said, what would be more radical? You altering your perspective of what a functioning government looks like, or people kicking your door down and hauling you and your family away and sending you to a Salvadoran prison.
There you go.
Which is the more radical of those two circumstances?
There you go.
We're always going to have to deal with the issue that people just simply have a natural aversion to change. But when you present what that change produces as compared to what the current circumstance will produce, that's the manner in which we have to address it at this point.
Beautifully said. Agreed.
I agree with you, Rachel. I agree with JJ. He's totally right. I love the fact that JJ came on, and like he said, we had the same thing. That's JJ. Sorry, we love him. Rachel, you're right, though. Rachel, you're right. Rachel, you're right. Rachel, you're right. And we need more people like you. I'm hoping that you are the beginning of what more Californians we're going to see. When you approached us, and I watched the episode you did on California independence, it was awesome. You crushed it. You nailed it. How come you get it so well? If I could ask you a question, I don't want to flip this. I know, but let me just ask this real quick, and then I'll shut up. And then it's your show. You're in control. How come you get it so clearly? The level of threat this is. I saw the episode. We talked before. How come it's like crystal clear to you?
Because I'm a being of oneness consciousness, and that's what I came to bring to this country, to this state, to this world, and to our new nation that we will have. Because I already see it as done. I'm going to say that loud and clear. We just need our reality to catch up to what we are all uniting together to create. As a being of oneness, you have to be a higher level of consciousness to actually see the truth in all things. And we need to be educated in what that means, what that looks like. And our new nation, that is a nation, a republic of oneness, a nation of true actual sovereignty, means we will devote ourselves to educating people and raising their level of consciousness. This goes back to what JJ was saying. We are the ones that have to change. We can't keep asking our oppressors to stop oppressing us. We can't ask our abusers, please stop abusing me. Oh, and you know what? Maybe, for shits and giggles, maybe stop poisoning our food and making me sick so I'm trapped in your sick care system. Let's stop asking the people who abuse, brainwash, torture, snatch us up and take us off the streets, take control of our bodies and take our rights away to please stop doing that. Would you please, sir? Could you consider to possibly stop? I'm sorry. Are we this stupid? We have to wake up for real. And that means putting the effort into raising our level of consciousness and saying that we as human beings deserve better, which means we have to become better ourselves. We are the ones who have to change. If we don't change, nothing outside of us changes. That's the bottom line. So we all need to make a choice that no matter how scary change might seem, if you don't like what you see, you have to start with yourself. Change yourself. Unite together with other people who are willing to grow, expand, evolve, and be better humans. It all comes down to our level of consciousness. I put the work in on myself every single day of my life. I walk my talk. That's why I can see the truth. That's why I can see the truth.
And what we have to understand is this. We've created the myth of American exceptionalism. We
Beautiful.
speak of liberty and justice for all. We speak
Yes.
of all men being created equal. We speak of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But when has that existed in this nation for all Americans?
Exactly.
Never. Never.
There you go.
And my sales pitch to anyone who will give me 5 minutes to talk about CalExit is this: the myth of American exceptionalism will be the reality of a sovereign California, and that is where we are. We are in a position to create everything that was promised to American citizens,
Yes.
but never delivered.
Beautiful. Drop the mic on that one. We have an opportunity to create something brand new and stop looking at the old way of doing things and trying and expecting something different as an outcome. I mean, that right there goes back to the Einstein quote, the definition of insanity. Keep doing the same thing over and over, expect a different result. That we have to be the ones to change. And if other people don't want to change, they can stay in the United States and they can deal with the violence and the war, and they can have their own civil war if they want to. I don't promote that. I don't ever want that to happen. I want all war and violence to end on the planet. But I truly believe in my heart and in my soul, we can be the leaders to show everyone else how that can actually happen. We can be the role models of that. How can we live without war? Well, let me show you the way. Let me count the ways and I'll show you by living it. And I think all of us have the ability to do that and show everyone else exactly how it's done.
We also, just to back up what JJ said and what you're saying, Rachel, we also think that this is the way to stop civil war. So it's an important point, because some people have said, you're pursuing this, so that will cause civil war. And I go, no, it's 100% backwards.
Yes.
There are two people who are going to do this to each other. We didn't make it that way. You could argue it was the introduction of social media. It was Trump. I think it's actually Newt Gingrich in the 1990s. And this has been also, there's something called the Big Sort, where people have sorted themselves into ideological similar communities from the 1990s. So whatever data you're looking at, it basically shows that America can't work together anymore. It's going to do this. One of the ways to prevent that is to release that pressure valve, take the pressure off. And if California wasn't part of the equation, frankly, conservatives would calm down a lot. This strategy saves lives in America. And if civil war happened, they're going to be coming for us. So this would save our lives too. We had this conference last night, and there was this woman going, I don't want to give up on all the liberals in these red states. And I go, look, I hear you. But real quick story. You and I are on a yacht. JJ, you've heard this. And the water comes up an inch, whatever. Then the next year it comes up another inch, whatever. Next year it comes up another inch. One year it comes up to the deck line, starts lapping up against our shoes. And it rises another little quarter inch. And I look at you and I go, can we at least have a discussion about a life raft? And you go, idiot.
Yeah.
That's where we're at right now. Like,
yeah.
We've always been on this yacht. Okay, but the water's slapping up against our shoes. My socks getting wet.
Yeah.
I didn't say leave. I said, can we discuss having a life raft? And the attitude is, why the hell would you do that?
That's radical.
That's radical. Why would you want to discuss having a life raft? And I go, well, artillery rounds over the freeway. That's never happened. Saying I'm not going to give disaster assistance. And the biggest thing for me was that when he said I'm not going to give disaster assistance, there was no pushback by the Republicans. Can any of you remember a Republican who was offended that Donald Trump would tell fellow American citizens, I don't like you guys, so I'm not going to give you the National Fund of Disaster Assistance? Name that Republican anywhere in America who goes, you cannot treat fellow Americans this way. Never happened. And then we shot the artillery shells and people could have died. Where's that Republican anywhere? On TV, radio? I'll even take a county elected office in Missouri. No one. So people go, oh, well, they're scared of Trump. And I go, are they or are they cool with it? They'll go, well, we need to get all these other states to join us. And I go, why do you think he's sending ICE in on Portland, Chicago, and LA?
Exactly.
Because his base loves that. And I had to argue with some liberals, and they go, well, we're going to do this, and we're going to get all the states to join us. And I go, the majority of the states like him. You're not going to get them to join it. He's doing this because they like it. It's not that everybody hates him. Look, in California, we get very myopic and we assume everybody thinks like us. They don't. One of the things I have to keep pointing out is in 2016, he won the popular vote outside of California. Everybody said, no, Hillary won the popular vote by the margin of California alone in 2016, which means in 2016, outside of Cali, over half of your fellow Americans backed Trump. If you want to go back to 2020, Biden barely won by 2 percentage points. In Europe, they were freaking out because they were told it's going to be repudiation. Now in the US, you heard, oh, Trump's gone, great day. In Europe, Germany, France, England, they were going, what the hell? You said you were going to repudiate him. 2 percentage points isn't doing that. Then you can go to 2024 and he won the popular vote. So this is the country you're tied to. A majority of people outside of California like this. They enjoy this happening to you and they think it's cool. One of the polls we keep pointing is last year, 48% of all Republicans view everyone here as not an American. Los Angeles Times poll, most Californians don't know that. 50% of all Republicans in America view you, all of you, not American. And 67%, according to that same poll by LA Times 2024, view California as nothing but a net negative on the entire United States project. That means 67% of Republicans think you have nothing positive to give at all in any capacity on anything at all. You're just bad. And 50% of them think you ain't really Americans. And so when we see, let's send active duty combat trained Marines on a domestic protest that we'd send to a foreign army. Let's shoot artillery rounds on this population like we did with a domestic foreign population. Let's deny disaster assistance to these fellow Americans. That's how you treat a foreign country. Exactly. And so when I see these behaviors to us and I don't see a pushback, I'm like, because they don't view you as Americans. They've literally said that. And so it's okay to shoot artillery rounds, send troops against you, surround you with troops, threaten you with arrest, and deny you disaster assistance because you're not Americans to them. This goes back to 2012. There was another poll in 2012 that showed the same level of hate. So this has been a decade or more of we're not part of America. And if you're going, no, they don't really mean it. People could have gotten shredded by shrapnel.
Yeah.
Right. And this is where I come down to JJ. I defer to him. Let's say it's 2035 and not 2045. That's 10 years from now. And what I asked the group last night is when they're shooting artillery rounds over the freeway and threatening to arrest you and sending in domestic Marines and disappearing and doing all this other stuff, how much time do you really think you got?
Exactly.
So now all of those data points that you just mentioned, Marcus, that you expect that people will be shocked by them, and most of the time they are. It doesn't shock me at all. And the reason why it doesn't shock me at all is because it goes right back to the issue of this myth of American exceptionalism. As part of my research beginning in 2015, I traveled to all 50 states. And, I went to places like Gove, Kansas, and Huntsville, Alabama, and Bend, Oregon, and Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and on and on and on. And after that, I wanted to issue a challenge to anybody who would be shocked or surprised by the data points that Marcus just talked about. And the challenge is this: go and spend 30 days in Gove, Kansas, and then spend 30 days in Brooklyn, New York.
Mm-hmm.
And I will defy that person to find one thing that those two places have in common, other than the mythical designation of both being American.
Mm-hmm.
And when the Constitution was drafted in 1787, the entire nation, was less than 4 million people, all of whom lived on the East Coast. And whether you lived in Maine or Georgia, the northern and southern extremes, you had something in common. You all wanted to get away from the king. You all wanted to get away from Great Britain. But the Constitution was drafted by old white men who owned property for the benefit of old white men who owned property.
Yep, exactly.
The people who drafted that Constitution didn't even know where the Pacific Ocean was. They didn't know where the land ended. And yet 250 years later, we're supposed to be looking to a document drafted by old white men for the benefit who owned property, for the benefit of old white men who owned property, and who didn't know where the Pacific Ocean was. And we're somehow looking at that and saying, that must be the only document that governs our existence today.
Precisely.
It's flat out bullshit. No other way to put it.
I love it. You're singing my song, JJ. You are singing my song. And
I'm trying to speak the truth here because the point is, we existed in a circumstance where after the drafting and the adoption of the Constitution, it still took 75 years and a civil war to get the vote for African American men, and another 60 years to get the vote for white women, and another 50 years to get the vote for minority women.
Exactly.
And so at what point do we stop, take a long, hard look at the situation and say, you know what, maybe this wasn't exactly all that it was made out to be.
Yep.
In the construction of the myth of American exceptionalism.
There you go. And I love it. I could hear you talk about this for the next 6 months of my life and not tire. It's brilliant, truly. And I think that's when we are sort of conditioned and brainwashed to just accept that you're told over and over again that you're exceptional, that is part of the brainwashing, so that you can be mind controlled, so that you can be led into a direction that we see unraveling in real time right now. And nobody's willing to stand up and rise up. And I'm not talking about with violence, but put an end to all of this, because but we're the greatest nation in the whole world. I mean, are we though? Like, look who's leading the country. I mean, you have violence and misogyny and inequality and racism leading a country, and you're calling that what we should be emulating. And that, to me, is absolute insanity. And it is a reflection of people who are at extremely low functioning, low level of consciousness. Like, it's time for us to grow and expand and evolve as humans, because look around. Like, this isn't good enough anymore. We're not good enough as humans. We are not showing up in the world as loving, harmonious beings who can create a magnificent world together, let alone our own country. And that right there is where we have to say enough is enough, and we are willing to do whatever it takes. And I'm never referring to violence when I say that. But we have to be willing to do whatever it takes.
That's the great thing, is that you're totally right. And I watched your episode, and here's the thing. A lot of people who back CalExit don't know that it's completely legal. That's the great thing. We know that CalExit will happen because every time we talk to people, they're not fully aware of the facts.
Right.
Every time JJ and I do a debate and somebody's like, I don't really like this idea, or I don't believe in it, after about 10 minutes, they're like, oh, okay, I'm on board, because they're mostly not aware of the facts. I mean, we literally did this last night. There were some people go, oh, CalExit, that's a fantasy. That's a fantasy. And then I just started dropping some facts, and they're like, I never heard any of that.
There
ever.
You go.
Never heard that in the news, never heard anything. I go, well, that's why we've been doing this.
Yep.
For example, there is a court case. I know this is a little dry, but there is a court case called Texas versus White. It's the only one on secession. Most people don't know that. You can look it up on Cornell, Stanford, Harvard Law. It exists. There's a phrase in there the news will not admit exists. They won't. It's called consent of the states. It says you can secede with, quotes, consent of the states. This is key. I've done 65 interviews in the last decade. One reporter would print that Texas versus White said consent to the states. It takes 2 seconds to verify that online with top law schools around the world. 1 out of 65 would actually print that. So most people have no idea.
Yeah.
That it's legal. They think this is just, oh, you're just going to mark. And I go, no, there's a legal precedent. It says consent to the states. The other thing they will not print. There's a professor called Erwin Chemerinsky. He's head of 2 UC law schools, 2, not 1. He's the top constitutional scholar in California. He's the most cited legal jurist in America. He said in 2017, a simple majority vote of Congress would be all that's necessary, because a simple majority vote is what got California in. I've told that to also about 40 reporters. No one will print that. It's public. It was in GQ magazine. It was printed in 2017. You can verify him in about 5 seconds. No one will print that. And I go, well, if nobody's going to let them know that the top constitutional scholar says it's a simple majority vote, and nobody's going to let them know that there is no ruling in the Constitution or in federal law on secession, but there is a Supreme Court ruling, and the Constitution says for legal disputes, you go to the Supreme Court, and they said consent. They also didn't say amendment. They never used the word amendment. They did not say if you want to secede, you must have an amendment. They said you must have consent. If you meant amendment, why didn't you say it? You'd been around 150 years. People knew about it. We have the top constitutional scholars saying it's not amendment. It's not 32 states. It's just 25. Nobody will print that. When I tell people that, they go, hold on. This is completely legal? Yeah, it's completely legal. All you have to do is have a domestic vote here in California, over half the population. By the way, CalExit's filed multiple ballot initiatives that show you how to place that language in for a vote. That's what we've been trying to do the last decade. We've had it approved by 4 California attorneys general. So if it's illegal to do, then how come Bonta, Keneally, Kamala, and Becerra all approved of it? And that's right, Kamala Harris, as in the former president, Becerra, who also worked with the federal government, approved and recognized that Texas versus White exists and consent to the states is there. We have the quotes from them. So the top legal officers in California recognize this exists. They've recognized we could have the vote here. Top constitutional scholar says 25 states. 31 states voted for Trump. 42 states hate our guts. We only need 25.
Yeah.
Nobody knows that. They will not print that. And so if you're taking up the mantle, the biggest thing is to let people know it's fully legal. Because every time I go and talk to people, they go, I'm a CalExit supporter. I didn't know this was legal. My God, if people actually knew that this is legal, we'd have 500% more support. The amount of support we have is by people who are aspirational. I watched your first video. It was awesome, but it was largely aspirational, which is great and awesome. Imagine how many more people we'd have if it wasn't aspirational and everybody in California had knowledge. Oh, it's totally legal. It's totally doable. It's just if we want to do it or not. They don't even know that. The amount of support this could have is even larger. And then when you tell people about how much money we're losing, $80 billion a year, that's an additional third to the California budget. We lose an additional third to California budget every year, subsidizing 2/3 of America. We've done this since 77, about 50 years. And I ask people, you call it the Golden State era, roughly 1950 to 1977. Why did the Golden State era end right when the donor state era started? Is that just a historical coincidence that when we started getting milked by America was when we had the end of good universities, good roads, good freeways, good water systems? And I go, I'm a historian. That's not a coincidence, folks. We were spending all the money on ourselves, and then they go, oh, you're rich. Let's take that and give that to the other people. And then we're like, now you don't have the money for yourself. Now you have to raise taxes. Now the roads fall apart. Now the schools fall apart. Now everything falls apart. And I go, how is that a coincidence that these two timelines line up perfectly? We started getting milked and we went down. Now we're still the world's 5th largest economy, but I've grown up in South Central Los Angeles, West Side Fresno, Oakland, and the Pocket area in West Sacramento, the crappiest places in all California. Why can't we take care of our poor kids? Why can't we provide the best schools for our children? Why is it brown and black kids and Southeast Asian kids? Because in Fresno, it's African Americans, Latinos, and then a group called the Hmongs. They're from Vietnam. And so there are certain minorities who need help. Other minorities do great, but other minorities need help. Why do we have ghettos? Why do we have poor areas? Why do we have dangerous places? We don't have to have any of this. Why do we have poor people? Why do we have homelessness? We don't need to have any of this. Why do we have broken roads? Why do we have the worst roads in America? Why do we have the worst levees in America? The levee over Sacramento is as likely to collapse as the one over New Orleans before Katrina. The federal government spent $0 fixing that. So also 9/11 funding. We didn't get our 9/11 funding for 5 years after 9/11, although Homeland Security Director Chertoff said we were the most vulnerable to attack. So we're in a dangerous position. Our lives are endangered, artillery shells. We can't get the things we need, and our society's collapsed since we've been doing this. What? Yeah, JJ.
One minor correction. We're now the 4th largest economy in the world. Since
there we go.
Thank you.
And
there we go.
To take the theoretical into the practical, which in order to expand our support base, we're going to need to do that. It's very, very simple. Are you a person that supports universal health care? If you're a person who supports universal health care, there is one path to universal health care, and that's a sovereign California.
There you go.
If you're a person who supports common sense gun control, there is one path to common sense gun control, and that path is a sovereign California. And you can go on and on and on, as Marcus talked about, infrastructure, homelessness. If you simply can agree with me that those things are good things, common sense gun control, universal health care, a living minimum wage, if you accept that those are good things, Washington has had 250 years to deliver that, and hasn't, and won't, because there's no appetite whatsoever in Washington for any of that right now.
Yep.
These would all become reality in a sovereign California. Going back to my original statement that California, a sovereign California, will deliver everything that the United States of America promised.
And has failed.
And just going back to California, like actually exiting, I don't feel like people think that it's an option. And I remember the first time that Rachel mentioned about, we're going to create our own sovereign nation. The first thing I thought of was, well, who do we need? Are we allowed to do that?
Whose permission do we need?
Am I even allowed to do that? And then I was shocked that was the first thing that I thought of, is like, as soon as I heard that, instead of me going, fantastic, great, let's do it, or, let me look into how this could be possible, the first thing I started thinking was, I'm not allowed to do that. And the conversations, I've lived in California for 3 years now, and I work in the hospitality industry. I work in restaurants. So I have a lot of conversations with people. And I bring this up all of the time. And one of the first things that I ask after I start to have this conversation, I ask this very question, like, do you feel like that's possible? Like you could actually do that? Like we could create our own nation? And I can tell that it's starting to turn a few cogs inside people's heads of like, man, I never actually even thought that was possible.
Right there.
And that's where I feel like the whole state is trapped, is in this this complete powerlessness and hopelessness, and just needing, you know, the consent, the reliance of a government, a higher governing body, to tell us what to do in order for us to make decisions. And it's only from, to go back to the question you asked Rachel, Marcus, is
Yes,
like,
sir.
is like, you know, how can she see it? The reason why I feel like I can see it is from learning from Rachel. And when you're able to really heal yourself and elevate your consciousness, you're able to start to take responsibility for yourself, and you stop looking to, you know, more in the terms of healing, it's mom or dad for all of your, you know, needs and support. But then that translates into how we show up in the world. And now when you start to take responsibility for yourself, you stop looking for somebody else to tell you what to do.
There.
And that's
right
what throughout the whole nation, or the whole of California, or we need to across the whole world, of course. But when we stop looking for someone else to tell us what to do, and we start connecting to our own selves and our own internal guidance, that's when we're going to start to see the shift.
You're totally right.
And just to add really quickly too,
Yeah.
one of the things that Rachel had us do was, you know, when we really feel into California separating, what comes up for us, and across the board, it was this like, well, it's impossible, and who's going to do it? And she pointed out to us, like, we all run a savior program looking for a savior to save us, because we've been so controlled to be so powerless. And so this idea is so radical to people because of the brainwashing that's been done to us across the board.
Ellie, you nailed it. You nailed it, Ellie. You nailed it. That's it exactly. So I want to get to what JJ's saying, because it's all positive and I'm kind of doom and gloom. But and JJ laid it out. That's what it really is about. But let me just say this real quick, because you guys are getting at the heart of this. Rachel, you said your whole group's about raising the level of consciousness, and that's from some of the shows I saw. And what I'm hearing from Ellie and Danny is people aren't aware of this fact that it's legal, right? So let's put this together. Here's a group that's dedicated to raising consciousness awareness. What's the major stumbling block to CalExit? People aren't aware it's legal.
Yep.
See how these line up? You might be the perfect messenger for this thing. If all you do was get people to go, actually, it's legal. Chemerinsky exists, guys. He's the GOAT. And he said simple majority vote. Texas versus White exists, guys. And it says consent. Sorry, deal with it. That could be all it takes. There is polling from a group called the Independent California Institute. And last year, they showed 58% of Californians were supportive of this. Most people don't know that. So that was a poll last year. It was by YouGov, which is a reputable institution. It was covered by Newsweek. 58% of Californians said some form of sovereignty. It wasn't full-blown independence, but it was some form of sovereignty from America. You're using the phrase sovereignty from America. You're basically already there. That same institution asked people, do you know that it's legal to secede? And it was like 65% don't.
Yeah.
So it's like 60% want this, but 65% don't even think it's legal. Think about that. A majority of Californians are ready to secede and they think it's completely illegal. What if they knew it was legal? What if they knew it was simple?
There you go.
This is people like, Mark, you've done this for 10 years. Why don't you quit? And I go, because they're not playing fair. Because every time I go somewhere, like last night, people are like, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I thought you guys were crazy. I didn't know that. I didn't know it. That's not fair. Let's have a real debate. If Californians don't want to be independent, but say, I understand it's completely legal and we could do it in a day tomorrow, but I still don't want to do it, then we're done. You know, we can't go anywhere. But I'm betting, like you guys are finding, if they knew 3 simple facts, 3, not 100, 3. Texas versus White, Chemerinsky. Boom. Oh, and 50% of Republicans hate our guts. We have the votes. Sorry. We need 25 states. Half of them don't like us. We already had the votes. Top constitutional scholars said this is possible. The only law on secession said we could do this. 3 facts. You get those out. We're talking about doubling, tripling, quadrupling the amount of people who support it. This has been the difficulty. This is why I keep bringing up, I've said this to 65 reporters and 1 would print it. Somehow somebody, and I'm not going to go down Conspiracy Avenue, doesn't want this information out there.
Exactly.
They don't want it to be known. They don't want people to know this. So, I mean, if you did nothing other than that, and this concept that we've been pioneering since JJ came on, JJ really straightened out a lot of our thinking. By the way, if I may, can I do a real quick aside about JJ?
Of course.
So, JJ, I'm going to do this without your permission, okay?
As he asked permission.
JJ is a political expert. He's worked in DC for 40 years. So he knows DC. He knows multiple presidential administrations. He's met Biden personally. He's met Trump personally. Didn't like him, but he met him. He's met almost every political actor you've talked about or seen. He's been there for decades. He's ran 67 campaigns. He has a master's degree, and he teaches master's students on political science. And out of the blue last year, or this year, he showed up and goes, yeah, let's do this. I'm all the way in. And he and I didn't really disagree on anything. And I go, how come you have all the same understanding? Because those are the facts. So the data's out there, just not everybody sees it. How come JJ and I had the exact same opinion and we've never met each other before? How'd that happen? And he just showed up and goes, yeah, that's true. That's true. Let's just do this. Also, I have to point out, there's a magazine called The Atlantic Magazine. It's the top policy magazine in America. It's read by serious policy guys in DC and Sacramento. They straight up said after Trump sent in artillery shells that Californians, if they're a donor state and can't get disaster assistance but get hostile deployments of troops, may begin to ask what's in it for them being part of the union.
There you go.
So 3 months, the top policy magazine in all of America said, maybe it's reasonable for Californians to consider secession. Nobody knows that. I'm screaming that up and down. It should be big news.
Yep.
Top policy magazine says CalExit's a reasonable idea. Nothing in the news, nothing mentioned, nothing covered. But if you talk to a professor, anybody in Sacramento, and you go to the Atlantic magazine, do you know it? And they go, yeah, they said this. People are like, whoa. So they don't know the Atlantic. They don't know Chemerinsky. They don't know consent. And the final thing we learned from JJ is we've been going for this idea of you need to have a vote for independence. And a lot of our ballot initiatives that and we have one now and we're collecting signatures for that. But the idea was you would get 600,000 signatures and you would force a law over Sacramento's head directly to the voters. The ballot initiative gives you the ability to put a proposed law directly to the voters, even if nobody in Sacramento likes it. It goes back 100 years. 3 states in America have this. Almost nobody does. We have it. But we've also learned that you could just get 2 legislators out of 120 in Sacramento to do the same thing. They could propose the vote, but we've also realized even lower hanging fruit. If you say, hey, I want to have a vote for independence, people are like, whoa. If you say, I'd like to have a government investigation with experts and really informed people who will have an investigation on what this could possibly look like, publish findings, and give that to the public so you would have an educated voter base. I didn't say vote. I didn't even say do it. I said study it so people know the facts. Oh, whoa, sure. That's a lot more reasonable. That's called a blue ribbon panel. California does those about 20 times a year. They wanted to clean up Clear Lake up north. They wanted to change safety regulations for nail salons. You want to change the way autistic daycare works. You want to redesign the California legal exam. You want to have a new credit card for SNAP benefits. They have to do this blue ribbon investigation. Like, so we want to have a credit card. Okay, let's bring in some bankers. Let's bring in some poverty experts. Let's bring in some people who use SNAP benefits. You want to have a new legal education. Let's bring in some professors and some lawyers and college. And then they go, here's the findings and here's how we could change that. The legislature doesn't have to implement those findings, but the report does come out. We think that If you look at Scotland, so Scotland is the marquee example for all peaceful independence movements. They've gone the furthest than anybody. Scotland was part of England for 500 years. For the last 100 years, they were talking about being independent, but everybody laughed and everybody joked and thought it was funny. A couple of years ago, they said, you know what we're going to do? We're just going to ask our Holyrood government to do an investigation into if we could be independent from England. You can look this up on Wikipedia. Historians say that the date that report was published, you could date that there would be a for sure vote for independence from England. Now, the vote didn't happen until years later, but historians are saying the moment that book dropped, guaranteed they're pushing for sovereignty. Here's the reason why. It's what we're talking about. The government said this is a reasonable topic and it's possible. So now everybody in Scotland knew. There was no more people going, is this legal? Can we do this? Is this okay? The government said the government had to acknowledge consent to the states. They had to acknowledge Chemerinsky. They had to acknowledge we could do this. They had to acknowledge we're the world's fourth largest economy. They had to acknowledge that we had a California agency for every federal agency there is, basically. So we already have the infrastructure of a nation state. They had to acknowledge that our governors are already traveling around the world, signing treaties with foreign countries and trade deals with others. And that goes back 20 years, which is operating as a president or a top executive official. That's the point, is that you and I saying it, whatever. The government officially says, yeah, we could do this. I'm not saying that we do it. I'm just saying we could pull it off. There will picture that. Picture a report comes out. The California government, picture this. This is what the idea JJ put in my head. Picture this. News comes on. California government is officially investigating leaving the United States of America. Question for Ellie, Danny, and Rachel. Is that global news that minute or is it not?
100%. Most exciting news that I will ever hear.
They haven't even started. They just announced they would do it. It takes 2 legislators to propose it and 5 to confirm a blue ribbon panel. There's 120 in SAC. You need 2 to 7 to pull this off. If they just announced it, global news. If they held the convention, global news. They published the report. The way you look at it is the report comes out, secession happens. Not because it makes it, but because all the facts are going to come out. All the facts of it's totally legal. We could totally do it. You cannot protect your ground, your civil rights, your people, your immigrants under the federal system. You cannot stop paying federal taxes. You have to subsidize 32 states who don't like you. When all that's open and the government says it, in Scotland, there was an epiphany, which it was no longer funny. It was no longer laughable. Everybody was talking about it. Everybody took it seriously. Now, there were still Scots who didn't want to do it, of course.
Of course.
But everybody had the facts and they were informed. And the fact, when Scots knew we could pull this off, it was 3 years later. And they were like, yeah, we're having the vote. We're having the vote, baby. Let's do this. I didn't know it was real. I didn't know we could do it, but our own government said it is. We're not officials. We're not on TV. We're not on CNN, ABC. And what I've learned, if it doesn't come on TV from a recognized authority figure, it's not true. So we have us getting word out, and then we can get to a certain breaking point, and then we can force the government to verify this. And that's why we say if you can just call the panel. Legally, it doesn't make anything happen, but spiritually, psychologically, it'll snap everything into place. Movement. There's no way this country, just think about that. The government says we're looking into this, and then they have a report, and then the report says, yeah, it turns out you can. How likely do you think secession would be then? If everybody in California knew it was legal and how doable it would be?
And that is where we're calling on all of our listeners to spread the word and to share this, to let people listen to this. Listen to this again. Write down the facts that you heard here today. Look them up yourself so that you can do your own research and see that, listen, I'm going to put this very simply. I did a previous podcast and called this Emancipation. And I did that intentionally, by the way. I thank you for those who are like, it's called to secede from the Union. I use that very intentionally because I'm tired of being a slave and being told what to do when being told what to do is not actually in my best interest. It's not in the best interest of this planet. It is not in the best interest of my fellow humans. It is not in the best interest of animals and nature and any living being. And because of that, you don't tell me what to do anymore. I make my own choices. And as long as we realize we have the power to do that by spreading the word, sharing this video, share it to every platform you have, share it with everyone you know. And it doesn't matter that you don't live in California in the United States. Spread the word, because we are the ones that have the power. And when you use that power for good, for healing, for elevation, in oneness, where all beings matter to you, in the end, we will win, simply because we choose to do so. We are the ones that hold the power, but not if we continue to live in ignorance and separation and powerlessness, the way we've been brainwashed and conditioned to do. Now is the time to wake up. Now is the time to join together. What better time is there? You're alive because of this. This is why you incarnated here, to see this type of revolution, one of peace, love, and harmony. And we're the ones that are going to do it. I mean, all of us together. Rise up, join, spread the word, join the movement, and tell us, Marcus, where can people find you? We'll have all this in the show notes. Where can they go look? Where can they support? How can they support? Tell them.
Go to CalExitNow.org. That's CalExitNow.org. That's the main website. You can donate. We have a PAC. We're trying to lobby. We're making some very big inroads. We need donations. You can also go to my channel, Marcus Ruiz Evans, on YouTube. I have a lot of videos up. And Rachel, I'll be sharing the videos with you. And I'll post them on this link wherever it goes. So you can. I've been inspired by you, Rachel. So JJ taught me a new program called CapCut. I've been inspired by you. I've made 3 different videos on what California would look like as a nation, and that's where they can get more information. If I could say one more thing real quick.
Of course.
We use the word separation. So we learned that from JJ. Just because secession has such a horrible tinge, so we say separation. But I got to back up something JJ said. I'm kind of the doom and gloom guy, but this is a positive vision. If California is independent, homelessness gets fixed. It doesn't get fixed any other way than independence.
Yes.
Gun safety becomes a thing. It will never be a thing without independence. Abortion will be protected and can never be taken away. That's still under threat until independence. Yep. You cannot protect your land from oil drilling or the ocean from oil drilling. Trump proved that in 2016 when California lost lawsuits. We cannot protect our lands. Half of California is federal land. We don't have authority. So that means they can drill, and we can't do much about it. Can't protect it till independence. Universal health care. Price tag's about an extra $100 billion. That comes easily with independence. It almost basically never happened without independence. Climate change and air quality regulations. They're trying to remove our clean air regulations. So we've had a special cutout since 1965 because California was the first one to do air quality regulations for cars. They're threatening that. And they don't really how many times even when Obama was president, he wasn't able to do everything he wanted on climate change. And Jerry Brown was going out to the world and saying even more action on climate change. So we can't get the climate change legislation we want. We can't deal with our homelessness. We can't have the gun safety we want. We can't ensure that women have protection to their civil rights. We can't protect our land. We can't have health care. We can't protect LGBTQ rights. The Supreme Court said it's okay to deny service to gay people. Remember the cake thing? If I want a cake that says gay marriage, I don't have to make you one. Okay, I can just say, ooh, gross, get out of here, right? That would never happen in California. Totally legal. We can't protect Latinos. I'm Latin. It's totally legal to racially profile Latin people. The Supreme Court said that, and then the director of Homeland Security said it on TV and bragged about it. And then Stephen Miller, my favorite guy, basically backed it up. He's a white supremacist, by the way. The Hispanic caucus labeled him a white supremacist. They basically never do that. He's the only guy in America they've done that to in the last 100 years. But he runs Homeland Security. Right. So if I'm driving in my car, somebody can just look at me and go, that guy looks Mexican, and yank me out of the car. Completely legal.
Yep.
That never changes. So you can't have the civil rights for immigrants or for gay people or healthcare or protect people from ICE raids or climate change or air quality or protect the land or protect women's rights or have gun safety. Our gun safety regulations are routinely struck down by federal circuit courts. Like, just type in California gun safety regulations struck down by federal court. You'll see stories going back 20 years. We can't get anything we want because there's the Second Amendment and it stops in the way. So we still have to be open to mass shootings like the one we had in Stockton. So we got to have our people get killed in mass. By the way, we have the highest number of gun deaths tied with Texas. Think about that. We don't really like guns. Texas loves guns, and we have the same number of body bags because we can't have gun safety regulations we want. Homelessness, we had 50% of the problem. We got 11% of the National Homeless Assistance Fund. It's called the McKinney-Vento. 9/11 security funding, we're the most likely to be attacked. Took 5 years, and then we only got about 20% of the funding. So if you're concerned about civil rights, women's rights, immigrants being harassed, protecting your land, protecting your air, protecting your children, dealing with the homeless issue, a lot of these things can't be solved. Like I was saying to the people last night, they go, well, why can't we arrest ICE? And I go, that's illegal. Why can't we stop supporting these red states? Well, that's illegal. You're talking about things that'll get you landed in federal prison.
There you go.
So,
and then the question becomes, what's actually more radical here?
Thank you.
Separating from a country of extremism and tyrannical misleadership, or us becoming our own sovereign nation where we don't function like this any longer? What is more radical versus common sense? What is in the way of harmony versus extremism? And the answer is obvious. So all we need to do at this point, everybody needs to do their part, spread the word, share this out, tell everybody you know, no matter where you live in the world, and then go to CalExit, look at their website. Everything will be in the show notes for you to look them up, and support, support, support. Do your part. Let's rise.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marcus,
for
being here today. Thank you, JJ, for being here with us today, for providing us with this wealth of information, all the statistics that we need to hear, the truth, the facts, and for doing everything that you've been doing, and especially for how long you've been doing it. I appreciate both of you so much, not just for your time and energy today, but for everything that you stand for. It is an honor to be here with you and to share this goal and this mission with you. Let's get it done.
I think you guys can go really far. You have the right mentality. You have a California energy. It's not about who gets across the finish line. It's about getting it done. It's not about who's saying it. It's about the message getting out. I have a certain way of doing things, and that works for a certain amount of people, but not for everybody. You might be the group that can take this mainstream. Somehow we have to mainstream 3 facts. You're called a consciousness group. You're focused on raising consciousness. You talk like Californians. I'm an ex-Republican. I'm constantly reminded of that. I left in 2012 with Romney, 4 years before Trump, okay? And I left because of racism. So I was there before even Trump. But you guys might be the ones to say this, package this the right way that people get it. If we had consent is there, simple majority, Chemerinsky, blue ribbon panel, and 50% of Republicans will vote for this. 4 facts. You could be the ones to do this. I mean, it's a consciousness level raising exercise. You speak like Californians, you talk, you move like Californians. This might get accepted. And if that's all that's done, that's all that's necessary.
Yeah. And it's all of us collectively doing it together. We will win this. It's already done, in my opinion. It's just, let's take action and have our reality catch up to what we are currently all coming together in unity and harmony and working together to make sure it happens. We can have a better country, a better world, but we have to be better first. Let's remember that.
We're willing to help you guys. So if you have meetings, I'll show up at any meeting. If you need any advice, if you need somebody speaking, anything you need, I'll send you an email. I made videos that I was inspired by you for that will explain it. They're really good. They're all AI. I think you'll love them. And I'll send you some notes on those videos today. And whatever you need to get going and conquer, I will back you 100%, whatever you need.
You are amazing. And we ditto, same, right back at you. That right there, I want everybody to hear that. How people from different backgrounds can come together in oneness and work together to achieve a common, powerful, loving goal. That is what we're demonstrating here today. So let's have the rest of you join us and get this done. Thank you, Marcus, so much. Thank you, JJ. We'll be hearing from you again. And let's hear from everybody else. Join the movement. Let's get it done. Thank you, everybody, for your time today. Bye for now.